Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to another episode of our Celebrating Superman series here on Missing Frames. I'm your host, Sean Eastridge. Now, normally on Missing Frames, you may be aware, we watch all of the movies we should have seen by this point in our lives. But in anticipation, in celebration of James Gunn's Superman being released on July 11th, I've been inviting all of the amazing Superman people I can think of onto my show to celebrate all things Man of Steel. Writers, artists, filmmakers, fans, you name it, all of them, they're all coming on the show. And we're just going to bask in the love of this wonderful, wonderful character. So in this episode, I spoke with Steve Younis, who is the owner of the Superman homepage. I think this is the longest running Superman website out there. I can't think of another one. This has been around since 1994. I've been visiting it for as long as I can remember, like since the late 90s. I was maybe 12 or so. This was the early days of the internet, and it was one of my favorite spaces, and definitely my go-to resource for all Superman news and really anything Superman. It was really awesome to finally get to meet Steve and talk with him about the origins of the Superman homepage, just like the early days of the internet, what that looked like, how the website started to gain traction during the late 90s when Tim Burton's Superman film, Superman Lives, was kind of about to go into production. I don't think it ever actually went into production. That was the one, by the way, starring Nicolas Cage. I mean, maybe we dodged a bullet, but there is also part of me that wish we had gotten to see Nicolas Cage as Superman. The website reached a whole new level of fame when Superman Returns went into production in the early 2000s. And Steve actually, because he lives in Australia, he got to go to the set where he then got to meet the filmmakers, and he has some really, really great stories about that. Steve and I also discussed the importance of bringing hope back to this franchise. Superman has kind of been going through a grim and gritty period on the big screen, and we're really excited to see James Gunn's take and very excited to see that kind of hopeful optimism brought back to the character. We also speculate about what DC has in store for Superman fans in April, which is just a couple days away. Literally, we have CinemaCon on April 1st, where we are expecting a new trailer, maybe some big news, and then there's Superman Day right around the corner on April 18th. So yeah, we kind of talk about what we're hoping for, what we're hoping to see. It was really amazing finally getting to meet Steve after all these years of admiring his work, of visiting the Superman homepage and really, really loving it. But either way, if you haven't seen this website, it's awesome. I mean, he even tells me there's a timeline where you can kind of see what the Superman homepage has looked like through the years. So definitely check it out, supermanhomepage.com. There's a newsletter you can sign up for. They have a YouTube channel and a podcast. So feel free to go there, sign up for all the awesome stuff. All right, let's go ahead and celebrate Superman with Steve Younis.
Now available to own on video cassette.
I was just saying, Steve, that this is going to probably be very easy for you. I think you're used to being on my side of the mic and like having to ask the questions, and now you get to just kind of be here and be like, wow, I get to just talk about Superman, answer questions about Superman.
So true. Yeah, it's talking about Superman comes so natural. But yeah, I'm usually on the other side of the interview, asking the questions instead of answering them. But talking about Superman is never a problem.
Never a bad thing. So I basically started this Celebrating Superman series as an excuse for me, because I don't have a Superman podcast, but I love Superman so much.
As my good friend Michael Bailey always says, it always comes back to Superman.
It does. It's true. So I've been, God, I couldn't tell you how long I've been visiting Superman homepage. I feel like it's been around maybe since the dawn of the internet, because I've been visiting Superman homepage since I was at least 11 or 12, like late 90s, I would say. Is that when it got started?
Yeah, it got started in 1994. So the website predates YouTube, Google, Facebook. It's just crazy. You're kind of aging me here. But I'm proud to say that, yeah, we are now celebrating our 30th year online.
Well,
Yeah,
congratulations.
thank you.
It's been my favorite spot to come to for Superman stuff for all this time. So
That's very nice of you.
it's great to be able to thank you and meet you after all these years.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that.
What are your earliest memories of Superman? Like, do you remember the first time you were exposed to Superman?
Yeah, it's kind of a bit of a blur as far as which came first. But I mean, I grew up in the era where Saturday morning cartoons were a big thing. You woke up, cartoons weren't just available 24/7 like they are now with streaming and what have you. But, it was Saturday morning was the time, you didn't have school, you could get up and watch the programs that were there, for children. And I remember the Super Friends being one of those shows that I would, look forward to all the time. I'm not sure if that came first, or I do remember when I was about 10 when my uncle took a bunch of us nieces and nephews to go see Superman 2 at the movie theater. And I remember that having a big impact on me. I think I'd seen Superman the movie already, whether it'd been on TV or what have you, but I definitely remember that being a big occasion. And so the Christopher Reeve films are a big point of my Superman fandom, as are the Saturday morning cartoons, whether they were Super Friends or reruns of the New Adventures of Superman from the Filmation studios. So, yeah, it's kind of hard to remember where, but I'd always remember Superman being an early part of my childhood. That's something that I always gravitated towards.
Was Superman 2, did that open the floodgates, or was it kind of like you had the cartoon, then Superman 2, and then was it a slow drip, or was it like immediately the floodgates had opened?
No, I think it was pretty much all around the same time, but it wasn't necessarily that it was just Superman. I was a big fan of a lot of, cartoons of that time, Kimber the White Lion and so many cartoons of that era that were just, so awesome to watch. And you look back at them now and you wow, those animation, such bad animation. Like it
Right.
really is, horrible to look back and see how stilted they were. But it was always there in the background. It didn't necessarily kick off and become a huge thing for me. It was not until much later in my early adulthood that I came back to Superman, because as you do, you grow up, you go to school, you go to high school, you become interested in other things, girls, you mature. And, I became big into playing the guitar. And so there were things that took me away from those early childhood hobbies. But then at the advent of the internet, I started looking up things that I was interested in from my childhood to see what was there. And that's when I discovered a web page called the Superman home page. That's pretty much all it was a home page and maybe one or two other pages. I remember there being the lyrics of the REM Superman song was another page of all things.
You've got the essentials, so
yes,
you're good.
That's right. You're good to go. And so I, from there, contacted the gentleman who was running the Superman homepage at the time. His name was Andrew J. Gould. And we kind of started sharing a few emails back and forth. And it was at that time that I was a graphic designer, was getting into web design. So I offered to help him out with a few, graphical changes to the website. You got to remember the internet in the early to or mid to late 90s wasn't capable of doing very much. We were all on dial-up modems. You couldn't put too many big graphics and things because it just wasn't capable of doing all that. So I just helped him beautify it a little bit. And after about a year and a half, he told me that he was sadly dying of a genetic skin disease that predisposed him to cancer, and only had a couple of months to live. And at that time, it was pretty shocking to me. I'd never really known anybody that I was close with that was, in that kind of situation. But so he was in the US and said to me, look, I'm going to have to, shut this homepage down. And I was like, well, if you think I'm worthy, I'd like to take over and continue your work. And so in late about November 96, we transferred about half a dozen files. That's all it was, over from his computer to mine. And then he had a list of things that he would like to accomplish with the website. And I just went on from there. And, I said to him, yeah, I'll check in on it from, week to week kind of thing. He's like, oh, I think you might need to put a bit more time into it than just once a week. And now it's become this all-encompassing, totally taken over my life. It's become almost a second job, and it's opened up so many doors. And I did keep in touch with his parents and his family for so many years. Sadly, both his parents have passed away now themselves, but we shared Christmas cards every year for the last 20, 30 years.
Oh, I love that so much.
And the website is still dedicated to him. At the bottom of the site, it still says dedicated to Andrew J. Gould. And I hope he'd be happy with where the website has gone, because
absolutely he would. It's incredible. And I mean, like, it really is. It's one of the top resources, if not the top resource of Superman stuff. So I think you've done his memory proud, and that's an incredible story. Thank you for sharing.
No problem.
What did it look like at the time? Like you said, it was just a few files. What were those files? Was it just like basic biography, some photos? What was it?
Well, funnily enough, we've actually got a page on the website that documents the history of the Superman homepage, and has, thanks to the Wayback Machine at archive.org, actual screen grabs of what the website looked like through the years. And it was very much just a grey background. I created this graphic that looked like Superman was punching through the background of the screen, which was, something that was kind of a novelty at the time. And it was, animated GIFs, which were big at the time, flashing things that were so cheesy now when you look back at them.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
And that was pretty much it. It had an about page about who Superman is, just, and I think it had an FAQ, which were big at the time as well. Frequently asked questions page about who Superman is, and a list of some of the comic books that were out at the time. It was very much a comic book centric web page, but that was it. And the REM lyrics, as I mentioned.
Of course. Oh, you've got to have the REM lyrics. It's just not Superman without it.
And that was it. So, since then I've gone on to obviously build it to be the be-all and end-all of Superman fandom: movies, TVs, comic books, interviews, reviews.
Yeah, it's exhaustive. It's exhaustive, and I'm sure it's exhausting at times to keep track of it.
It can be, but it's a joy to do.
So you, once you started running it yourself, what was your big priority? Like, what were you thinking? Like, you know what, I've really got to take it to this level by doing this.
My first priority was get some help. So I went out there and, was participating in some message boards at the time, which were a big thing back then. They didn't have social media, and found some like-minded Superman fanatics who were willing to volunteer their time to write reviews for the comic books. We started reviewing Superman the Animated Series when that came on. And so we just started building slowly all the little bits and pieces. And, I wanted it to be obviously something that covered all aspects of Superman, from, TV, comic books, movies, what have you. We wrote reviews of the 4 Christopher Reeve films, which were obviously a big thing at the time. People knew about them. Then we started documenting all the rumors and speculation about a new Superman movie.
I think that's probably when I discovered it, when Tim Burton's project was sort of getting off the ground. I do remember visiting Superman homepage and finding all the different photos you guys had there.
And that's when we really became like the news outlet for Superman stuff. We started, but before then it was more like an archive of information. But then coming on board, I wanted to make it current and make it something that people would want to come back to daily, so they could see what was new and, what was happening, so that it wasn't just something like a library where you visited it when you wanted to find something or research something. I wanted it to be a community-based thing where people would come and hopefully be able to comment in the message boards and things like that. So it became, we even did like a live text-based chat at one point early on in the day, so that we could just try to build a community and make it something that people would want to come back to regularly.
When you started building that community, was that when you started to feel like the website was taking on a life of its own. It was starting to pick up in popularity, or as you were saying, there wasn't a whole lot of Superman on the internet. This was kind of the central spot. So was this the point where you really started to feel like, oh my gosh, this is becoming a whole new beast?
Yeah, it was kind of, the first few years were kind of slow building, and it was just about, finding my feet as far as building a web page was concerned, and contemplated changing the name from Superman homepage to something else, but it just became a brand of its own. So even though a home page is not really, you don't see that anymore in the way people, label websites anymore. That's really what it was. It started as just a home page, and there wasn't much more to it. And then I couldn't change the name after a while because it just became synonymous with who we were. And so I designed the logo and, tried to build that whole thing. But it wasn't until 2001 when I was approached by a company called Fandom, who were trying to build this overarching hub for all things pop culture. And they wanted to have me as the person doing the Superman hub of their fandom. And there was, The Simpsons, there was Batman, there was Kiss, of all things, the band. You pretty much think of any pop cultural icon at the time, and they wanted to bring that into fandom.com, and they wanted to pay me to do the Superman section. And I was like, the guy's name was Chip Meyer. And I thought, that sounds like a made-up name. I ignored it at first. I thought, this can't be true.
You're like, I've read enough Superman comics to know that this guy is up to no
sounds
good.
like a villain.
Exactly.
And I took some convincing, but it was legit. And it was like, we want to fly you over to LA. We're going to have a big launch. We're going to rebrand everything. And you'll be the guy running our Superman section. And I was like, wow, this just kind of blew my mind. And that was a success for a couple of years. But then, with the whole .com crash and everything kind of, all that funding that went in to these websites kind of fell away. And we had to go back to being just a fan-run thing of our own, a website of our own existence. And that's when I started getting my own hosting, registered the domain name supermanhomepage.com, because up until that point we were on GeoCities, which is like a free hosting thing at the time. And but fandom really opened up the doors to make us a legitimate place, that people actually thought was more than just a fan site, that it could be a trusted source of information, and it really legitimized us. So I was very thankful for that period of time, a couple of years. But then, we kicked on from there, and it's just kind of never looked back.
Did you find yourself in a scenario where you started to get, like, you guys had exclusive information and like things like sketches, production art, and like behind the scenes, like, oh, is this like what the symbol is going to look like? Is this what Nicolas Cage is going to look like in the suit? Because this is when Tim Burton was attached, Nicolas Cage was attached as well. Was that when you started to realize, as you were getting access to these sort of quote unquote top secret pieces of information, were you starting to realize like, oh, I've got some pretty cool connections here, I've got some firsthand knowledge of what's going on?
It was really cool. Like, at the time, we were getting access to the editors at DC Comics for the Superman titles. We would do a weekly Q&A with them, and they would answer directly our questions. And that was like, because the letter pages had kind of gone from the back of the comic books at that stage. So we were that direct source of people could submit their questions to the editor of the Superman comics, and it would be published weekly on the Superman homepage. And so that was really cool. And then, we're starting to get some access to information from the movie, especially when Superman Returns started ramping up. The writers of the script that were working at the time were actually using the Superman homepage as a resource for research. And so they would contact me, and the fact that it was filmed here in Sydney, Australia, where I live, was fantastic, because then I could go out on the streets and where they were shooting and chat. I got to meet some of the people who were working on the film. The director, Brian Singer, came out from the tent while they were filming, and we were behind these barricades, and he was like, where's Steve Younis? And I was like, oh, over here. And he's like, oh, love your work. Keep up the great work. And
you're like, hey, likewise.
wow, yeah. And I was like, this is, that recognition was really cool. But it was always just about having fun with it. But it kind of became a bit more serious then when you realize that, geez, I'm getting this information that nobody else has. And the responsibility kind of weighed a little bit heavily on my shoulders. Like, how do I do this without, one, if I do get something that DC or Warner Brothers doesn't want out there?
Yeah, you don't want to piss anybody off.
Exactly.
You still want to be on friendly terms. You want the access to all these cool things, and you've got to walk that fine line of like, is this a little too exclusive? Is this a little too behind the scenes?
Well, for an example, one big thing that happened in the comic books, there was, at the time, DC had released a blacked out version of a comic book cover, not so that they wouldn't reveal who the big villain was of this story, and it ended up being the Joker. It was the
was it Emperor
Joker? That's the one. And somebody at DC Comics accidentally uploaded the proper version of the cover. Within like 5 seconds, they pulled it down. But within those 5 seconds, I'd actually visited it and grabbed it. And it was like, nobody else had seen it. And I was like, do I run with this? What do I like?
Right.
How do I handle this? Because this is a scoop, but am I going to piss somebody off at DC Comics and then get wrapped over the knuckles and maybe get a cease and desist letter, which I've gotten a few of those over the years? And, how do you handle this kind of situation? And
this is also like nowadays, especially, there is, clickbait rules the nation, And this is really like, if that had happened more recently, there may have been less of a question of like, do I do this? Should I do it? It's almost like that's the whole reason. Well, that's why I have a Superman. I got to get these and like throw this stuff out there so I can get these clicks. So it's amazing to think like there was at a time like a moral question on the internet, like certain people, and you've maintained that to this day. You've brought that with you, but it is funny to think about how other people in this day and age may have it would have immediately been on Twitter. It would have immediately been out there.
Exactly. And nothing stays secret anymore. But by the same token, you don't want to burn those bridges of having that great relationship with DC and Warner Brothers, because, they've invited me to world premieres of movies, and, I've gotten to go and visit the offices at DC and hold a original copy of Action Comics #1 in my hands, and those things wouldn't happen.
I'd be too scared. I'd be like, if anything happens, this is the end of my life.
So it's been an interesting kind of balancing act dealing with those kinds of things over the years, and trying to. They see me as, I guess, a partner, because all I'm doing is promoting their character. But by the same token, I don't have any right to use the Superman word, name, logos, anything to build my website. They could make me change supermanhomepage.com because I'm using their trademark, their name. And I have registered superfanhomepage.com because I can't sell anything with Superman homepage on it to try to, get fans wearing T-shirts or have stickers or whatever the case might be. It's got to be a super fan homepage version of it, which still leads back to the website, but that's not what I'm known for. So it's one of those tricky things where you want to try to make a living out of what you do, but by the same token, I've got no right to do that because it's not my property to own.
What would you say as far as like these premieres and things that you've gotten to do? I guess what I would ask is what was the first time you got to go out and do something like that was super cool like that, like going to DC offices? Do you remember the first time you got an invite and what that was like?
Yeah, the first thing would have been Superman Returns here in Sydney, because I live so far away from everything that's happening in the US, where most things take place, conventions and what have you. I've been to the Superman celebration in Metropolis, Illinois, and that was really cool because people are coming up to me at that celebration who are specifically Superman fans. It's not like just any convention where you've got people of all types of walks of life. This is specifically a Superman event. And people were coming up to me like, love what you do, can I have a photo with you? And the fact that I was Australian and probably a bit of a novelty was, more probably what it had to do with it. It doesn't hurt. So that was really cool, getting that recognition and that pat on the back from people to, kind of validate what all the time and effort I'd been putting into it meant something to people. But as far as anything official, the access that I got was definitely Superman Returns here in, I think it was 2005 at the time when they were filming it here in Sydney, and getting access to, do the tour of the sets and sitting down with roundtable interviews with the actors, getting to watch Kevin Spacey film a scene inside one of the Sydney museums here where he was going to steal the kryptonite and all
Right.
those kinds of things. Getting to be part of that was amazing, and that was that recognition from Warner Brothers saying you're a valued member of the media, because you got to remember at the time the internet was kind of like the ugly sister of newspaper, TV, radio. It was not
Yeah.
considered legitimate. So that was probably the first time. And then, Man of Steel, getting to be invited to New York to go to the world premiere of Man of Steel, and then getting invited to
cool.
the after party and being to rub shoulders with celebrities and, meet Henry Cavill in person. And for him to say to me, the only website I visit is the Superman homepage when it comes to Superman information.
How nice.
Exactly. I mean, he probably says that, says that to all the girls.
He says that to everybody. He said that to me. He's like, I love your Superman. I'm like, sir, I don't have a Superman website. What are you talking about?
Exactly. It's his go-to comment. But that was really cool as well.
Do you have a favorite time period for Super? Because there are ups and downs. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's been a steady flow of Superman content through since Man of Steel, there's been the Snyder films, but then it kind of went quiet. Then Justice League came out, and then we got Superman and Lois. But what has been your favorite period, and what has been maybe the hardest period to kind of keep things going, keep the news flowing?
Yeah, the as far as the website is concerned, probably the most challenging time was when we had all those rumors about when a movie was coming out from Superman Lives, Superman Reborns. That was a great time because there was just so much happening and there was just so much out there, and the speculation and the rumors was just, a really fun time to be part of all that, and getting snippets of what the costume might look like and Nicolas Cage and all those kinds of things. That was a really cool period to be involved with. That's when the website really kind of started building that whole news aspect of people needing to come daily to figure out what was going on. Some of the down periods, some of the slow periods have been when there's been nothing happening, after Superman Returns was like, what's going on now? There's,
Yeah, it was like a dead zone for a while.
It was really only the comic books that were keeping us going. There was always something on TV as well. Smallville thankfully lasted for 10 years, and that was a great period. And then once that ended,
at that point, it was still like, that was the second half of its run too. So the novelty had kind of worn off a little bit. So you're still kind of dealing with that, maybe not lack of interest, but diluted interest. Like the peak had died down a bit.
Definitely. So, and then we started to ramp up again with Man of Steel and all the speculation about casting and all those kinds of things. So, and now we're doing it again with the upcoming Superman movie for James Gunn's movie. It's the calm before the storm at the moment because we're in that, we've had the trailer, we've got a TV spot, and now we're all waiting for what's coming in April. Is it going to be April 1st? Is it going to be April 18th on Superman Day? Are we going to get a 5-minute It's just got all this speculation and rumor, and it's just going to ramp up. And then once that movie hits, it's just going to be
crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
And I feel like April seems poised to be maybe the start of that in the summer of Superman. I mean, it feels like it's probably going to be the year of Superman. I think Mark Waid, I was talking to Mark Waid and he was saying it's going to be the year of Superman, and I'm totally okay with that.
Once this merchandise really hits, like we've seen, a backpack here and a toothpaste thing there, and, there's a few t-shirts obviously, and all that stuff that's available through the DC shop and Warner on Amazon as well. But once we start seeing action figures and figurines and all that kind of merch, it's just going to go nuts.
How are you feeling about the James Gunn movie in general? As there's plenty to talk about as far as the media that's been released, but what's your anticipation for that film?
I'm optimistic about it. I'm really feeling hopeful, which is kind of, I guess, pun intended, Superman, the symbol of hope. But I mean, I know there are people out there who are saying it looks too childish, or it looks, we've got crypto in there. And I've actually got an article coming out for the next issue of my newsletter, which will also be a version of a video that I'll be doing in regards to what Ben Affleck said about, realizing that maybe the movies got a bit too dark, that when his son was too scared to go and watch his Batman films, that he realized maybe we've got a problem here.
Yeah.
And I think that we've had that period of that dark, gritty, realistic superhero genre. It's time now to go back to a more family-friendly iteration of what the superhero movies should be. I'm not saying I'm living in the past and want them to replicate the Christopher Reeve Superman films, but they need to have that vibe about them. They need to be accessible to people who are 8 to 80. And again, I'm probably showing my age, but you look at films that we grew up with, I grew up with in the 80s, things like E.T. and Ghostbusters and Goonies, and those films that were accessible to both children and adults alike. And they became icons. And, they're films that we look back on now with reverence. We think, how awesome were those movies? They pretty much were our childhood. And that's even the early Indiana Jones movies.
Yeah.
They're an adventure film that there's content in there for the adults, and then there's stuff in there that the kids can enjoy. There's the action, there's the color, there's the movement. But there's still the adult jokes or the adult innuendo in there that, we can hang our hat on. So I think a Superman movie should be an adventure film that is accessible to all ages, and it doesn't take itself too seriously as far as being realistic or gritty. And, don't get me wrong, I loved Man of Steel. I loved Henry Cavill as Superman. I think he did a fantastic job, and I'm bummed for him the way it was handled with his departure.
Yeah.
I think that was really poorly handled, but I think we've done that Zack Snyder's version of the story. It's time now to try to bring back the light and the hope, and they try to position Superman as a symbol of hope in those films, but I never felt very uplifted by those stories.
No.
And I didn't see any kids coming out of those movies tying a towel around their neck and zooming around. It was very, if kids even saw those films.
I think at the core of it, if I were to pinpoint something, what were my issues with those films? It's that a kid should come out of that movie feeling delighted.
Yes.
And wanting to be Superman, and not like, oh my God, he's scary and angry all the time.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I think Superman always contained that element of childlike wonder.
Yeah.
That's the point of Superman. It's the dichotomy of the most powerful man on the planet is still going to save a kid's cat from the tree. And once you lose that, then he's just a powerful, boring, angry guy who can shoot lasers from his eyes. So,
and how many of those do we have at the moment? The Boys and all those other movies and shows.
It's true. The Boys is doing a commentary on that right now. And I think we've had plenty, to your point, we've had plenty of commentaries on superheroes and dissecting them and breaking them down and ripping them apart. And what we really need, especially in this day and age right now, is a hero we can cheer for and look up to. And I think Superman at his best has provided that for generations.
Yeah, agreed.
When you said, I know people who are like, oh, crypto's in it. I'm like, anybody who is not thrilled about crypto in this movie cannot be my friend. I do not want to be near them. I don't want to know about them. I will be so deeply offended. I love James Gunn in general because he is such a big comic book fan, but I think in general he understands how to balance storytelling, to make it exciting and modern, but also recognizing that what Superman is all about is that sense of joy. And I'm very, very ready for that. And to me, that's Superman.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be a competition for those folks out there who love those Zack Snyder movies. Great. I'm happy for you. Go for it.
Yeah.
They're there. It doesn't have to be one or the other. You don't have to say, I hope this new movie fails because, I want Zack Snyder to continue making movies. It's that's not what Superman's all about. Let people enjoy what they enjoy and move on. If I like chocolate and you like vanilla, it's not my job to try to convince you that chocolate is better than vanilla.
Right.
I'm happy that you like vanilla. Go for it.
The world would be a less rich place if we only had one or the other. We need them both.
Exactly. So, I just wish folks out there, and I know it's the internet and that's what we do, but, it's not a competition. If someone has an opinion that's different from yours, it's not a challenge for you to change their opinion. And it's not for you, it's not the fact that they have an opinion that differs from yours doesn't lessen your opinion either. Don't take it as a diss that your opinion is not the same as theirs. there's nothing wrong with having different opinions.
I totally agree. And I mean, if you are, as you proclaim, to be a Superman fan, then shouldn't you be like thrilled by the fact if we get a new Superman movie that, like I said, there's plenty more stuff that you're gonna spend your money on. So this is not a bad situation to be in, all things considered.
Exactly.
Let's do some favorites, some
Okay.
personal favorites of yours. What would you say? Maybe just Superman's, let's say comics, like in the comic world, what would you say are maybe like your top favorite Superman stories in the comics?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. I came in, believe it or not, because as I said, I wasn't there reading comic books as a child. So I came in after the death of Superman. It was all that publicity about the death of Superman and finding the novelization version by Roger Stern on the bookshelves as I was walking to work one day that I saw this bleeding S on the cover and I thought, wow, what's that all about? And read the novelization and then found the comic book. So it was like I came in from a different perspective than probably a lot of fans. But yeah, those early stories, the death of Superman, what came after that, having that as my foothold getting into the world of Superman and then looking online and finding, they will always have a special place in my heart because that's what kicked off all this 30 years ago for me.
I've always been very, very partial to like right in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was like a slew of, I guess, standalone Superman stories like For All Seasons
My
and
favorite, one of my favorites.
Yeah, Secret Identity and
Yeah.
Birthright came out. Like I remember it was just like boom, 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 all of these one right after the other. And
Yeah,
it was like, hey, I'll take them.
Take them all. If I had to recommend someone, like they said, what would a trade paperback that I can read? It would be Superman For All Seasons.
That's a great one to start with. So what would you say is your favorite? And it could be TV or film, animated or otherwise. What is your favorite Superman adaptation?
This is probably going to surprise a lot of folks, but my favorite adaptation of Superman is the 1940s radio series.
Yeah?
I love Bud Collyer as Superman. Obviously, Christopher Reeve holds a special place in my heart because that was my childhood. But discovering the radio series and Bud Collier's take on it and how it has informed everybody else's version or take on the character of Superman, because he started that whole Clark Kent having that softer, higher pitched voice, and then Superman having the more deeper baritone. It informed everybody else's take on the mild-mannered reporter and the superhero. And yes, he obviously was in the Fleischer cartoons, which predates, well, for many people, it's around the same time, but it kind of predates the radio series. But he didn't have a lot to say, or they're more about the action.
It was like 5 minute. Well, yeah, 5 to 10 minutes really a pop. And the radio show, which I just purchased the set, like the CD set, and have been listening to them. And it's so funny any Superman fan or anyone slightly curious owes it to themselves. All this stuff is very easily accessible on the internet. But just going back and rereading the comics from like that early age when he was just getting started, listening to those stories, watching those cartoons, it's so fun historically as a fan to start to say like, wow, okay, so it wasn't Martha and Jonathan Kent who raised him. Like in the radio show, I think he just arrives on Earth as an adult. Yeah. So it's like there are all sorts of fun things. The radio show is where I think that's where he started flying, right? It wasn't in the comics.
Yeah,
I think jumping in the comics.
Exactly. And even in the Fleischer cartoons, one of the first ones, he's just leaping from building to building, and eventually they had him flying. But in the radio series is where we got the first version of Perry White, Jimmy Olsen, Kryptonite. They were all invented for the radio series. The Kryptonite was invented for the radio series to give Bud Collyer a bit of a break, so that he could, just have groaning and what have you, and he didn't have to do many lines. He was just, feeling ill from the effects of the Kryptonite. So and just as you said, historically, the way they spoke, the way that reporters were revered as a great job to have, like as they're almost up there with police officers as people that
they were justice seekers. Like they were the ones looking out for the little guy.
Exactly. So it's really interesting to look back and kind of hear the way they spoke to each other. And I just love that version of Superman. I think it's awesome.
So we're about to get an onslaught of new Superman comic book series, but right now there are a few that are out. Is there a modern comic that you are enjoying more than any other? And also, what are you looking forward to the most in this slew of titles that's about to be released?
I'm really enjoying the different take on Superman in Absolute Superman.
Yeah.
That's kind of really interesting where they're going with that. Yeah, it's a really strong time to be a Superman comic book fan because they're doing such great things with the character in Action Comics and Superman. I'm looking forward to Superman Unlimited, a new series coming out. There's a new Supergirl comic book, as you mentioned. There's Krypto, the Last Dog of Krypton, coming out. So the summer of Superman is really going to kick up into gear, and it's going to give comic book readers a whole slew of things that we can look forward to and sink our teeth into. Really, there's something out there for everybody as a comic book fan. You know, if you're not into a particular writer or a particular direction they're going, then there's something else that you can sink your teeth into and hang your hat on. There's so many great writers and artists and that involved in the Superman comic books at the moment. We're really in a purple patch.
I was about to say, look, when you said it, when you were like, there's so much great stuff out there and the variety, like, I do think as far as the amount of stuff, the variety of stuff that's out there, this really is arguably one of Superman's most fruitful periods, like you're saying.
Yeah, well, we just came off that era, that story of Superman going back to, he was in that battle armor, fighting
the War World.
War World.
Yeah.
And all that, that was kind of a completely different direction to take Superman. He wasn't a Clark Kent Daily Planet situation. He's off in space, fighting on War World, saving, doesn't have his full powers, saving the little guys.
Yes.
And then he expanded the super family with the two adopted kids from that story. So there's a lot going on at the moment with the super family. There's Steel, there's Supergirl, there's Connor, there's John, and so there's a lot of family members. But I'm looking forward to them going and just concentrating on Superman, Clark Kent, Lois Lane, and having kind of get back to the Daily Planet side of things as well.
Yeah, I love the Superman family, but I am ready. I'm like, let's pare it back down and focus on this kind of like that trio. Jimmy, Lois, and Clark would be nice to see some more stories for them.
For sure.
But what do you think it is at the end of the day? And really, this could kind of touch on James Gunn's Superman. One, what do you think that movie needs to succeed? And then also, what do you think it is about Superman that excites you and excites the world?
As far as what it needs to succeed, it's obviously Warner Brothers has got a lot hanging on this movie because
Right.
it is the first film.
the fate of their entire studio. No biggie.
Pretty much. So I think for it to succeed, it needs to resonate with audiences. It needs to be a film that people leave and want to go back and see again and want to tell all their friends about. It needs to be something that excites people and, as you said, builds that hope and that sense of adventure and wonder, so I think that that's something that it needs to really bring. Why I think Superman still resonates with people 85 plus years later is because he adapts with the time. He has been what we need him to be depending on what is happening at the time. He's been that father figure, after the war period, he was that symbol of hope that, America was bright and coming out strong. And then there was, like you look at the Christopher Reeve films, they had that sense of adventure that I keep talking about. He's always been what we need him to be at the time, but what stays true to the character is the fact that he does the right thing simply because it's the right thing to do. He doesn't have ulterior motives. He's not out for revenge. Doesn't feel guilty because his uncle died and he's responsible for it. Or he's just had this great upbringing by these two loving parents, and he's just the salt of the earth. He's the person you wish you had next door. He's just someone that we see as a friend, someone, as I said, who there's no secrets about why he does what he does. He's out there because he wants to help people. And I think that's just something that, you can be cynical and you can say, oh, that's pretty, cheesy or what have you. But at our core, that's all we really want as people, is to help one another and be helped by other people. And, if you're in business as an entrepreneur, you're trying to solve someone's pain point as a business model. You're saying, what problem do I need to solve to, create this business around? So it's all about helping people. And I think that at its core is what Superman's about. It's all about helping people because it's the right thing to do. And I think that just resonates with everyone. Doesn't matter how old you are or what generation you're from. At our core, people, we just want to be friendly and help one another.
Well, I think you, Steve, are helping people through the work you do with this website. Like I said, I've been a fan for, I'd say 30 years now. I've been visiting the site, which is crazy, but I really appreciate all the work you do, that the whole team does. I know a lot of them are just doing it because they love Superman, and it's very much appreciated. So thank you for making it happen and keeping it up and running.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that. It is sometimes a lonely place to be. You're behind this computer and you're sitting in your room on the other side of the world from most of the people who you're speaking to. And so from time to time, to get that recognition, to get that pat on the back and say what you do matters, kind of makes it all worthwhile. Because at the end of the day, I just want to be out there doing what I can do to help other people, who bring fans together and build a community around this wonderful character that we all love so much.
Absolutely. So people can obviously go to supermanhomepage.com. What else can they do? They can sign up for the newsletter. There's a YouTube channel, a podcast. Where else can they find the cool stuff you're doing?
Well, we're all over the place as far as social media accounts are concerned. We're on Facebook. We've got a Facebook page, a Facebook group. We're on Twitter, or X as it's known now, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, TikTok, Pinterest. We're across all of them. But obviously supermanhomepage.com is the hub that they all focus in on. It's the one thing that they're all leading into. That's the main part. We've got the YouTube channel, which is also big. We do a weekly Speeding Bulletin news report where it's me just kind of catching you up on what's happened in this past week in the world of Superman. But we also do a 1 hour live show on YouTube with my co-hosts Michael Bailey and Mark Lax, where we talk about that news and give our opinions on it. And discuss that with fans watching live who are able to comment and even call in if they want. So they're the main things, supermanhomepage.com, and on YouTube, Superman Homepage videos. Just reach out to me if you got a question. Steve at supermanhomepage.com is my email address.
And there's going to be plenty to visit this website for in the coming, not even months, like probably in the next week. We're recording this at the end of March, but by the time this goes up, we may already be in the midst of the full-blown insanity.
I tell you what, people say to me, what do you do? How do you do something on the website every day? I'm like, how can I not? There's multiple things to do every day. It's just nonstop.
It never stops.
It never stops. It really is a never-ending battle.
But a good battle. It's a good battle. Yes, for truth.
We're winning the battle.
Truth, justice, and the Australian way is leading the path. Well, Steve, thank you so much. Thanks for celebrating Superman with me.
Thank you, Sean. Really appreciate you having me on.